On today's episode of Cheating When Love Lies.
Your husband's affair partner has a brand new car, and you're driving a 10-year-old model. Your husband's affair partner has a brand new air conditioning system, and you're sweltering in the heat because your AC is broken. Your husband seems to have endless resources for her and little for you. This is what happened to my guest, whom we'll call Vicky, when she discovered her husband's untruths and a multi-year affair partner whom he lavished.
He was fully supporting her. He was paying her mortgage, her car payments, her gas. She had a credit card to use. There was nothing he didn't pay for that she needed.
What would you do if you discovered your spouse's affair partner was receiving as much or more emotional and financial support than you? What happens when you discover an affair partner who feels more like your spouse's main course than their side piece? Vicky, the life you described to me sounds like a dream. Living part-time between multiple homes, one home being in a dream destination. You and your family travel a lot. Your kids are well educated and in private schools. But there is an aspect to you and your husband's life that's unusual. What did you ask your husband about how you could live together when you got married?
Well, I told him from the beginning I was from, a different destination, and that I would always be living there part-time because I was from a different culture and really language and all of that. And so it would always be important for me to raise my kids in that place at least part of the time. And he said, that was no problem. And he supported that.
How much time did you spend with your husband versus being on your own in your various homes and hanging out with your girlfriends?
60-40, 60% with my husband, 40% not with him.
Mm-hmm. Did you find that ratio worked for the two of you, or?
He always thought it worked. I thought it worked. As time went by, I didn't like it as much, and he definitely didn't like it as much.
What changed as time went by that made you, quote, not like it as much, and he not like it as much?
I got older and I just didn't like being away from him as much. And we, as time went by, of course, we're married longer and longer. And also our children grew up. And as our children grew up and went away, then if I was gone, then he was just alone.
Mm-hmm. You have 4 children, and your youngest, as you said, goes to college. And then your husband's behavior changes. How?
It was little things to start with. As I look back now and I put it all together, these were big changes that I didn't see because we had still a busy life and we still had all of our kids, and no one ever talked about getting a divorce or anything like that. I remember one day, it had been very cold and it was a beautiful day. And we used to take these very long walks together. And it was the first beautiful spring day. And I knew I was leaving the next day to go away on a business trip out of the country. And I would be gone for a while, like 3 weeks. And the place I was going out of the country was a very remote place. So I wouldn't even be able to call him or anything. And I said, oh my God, I just can't believe it. It's finally beautiful weather. And now I've got to leave you tomorrow. And he said, that's okay. And at that moment, I said, the little warning bell went off. And I said, well, that's really weird that he would say that. And then another day, he went to leave for work, and then he came back into my room right away and said, when are you leaving next? And gave him a date. And I said, why? And he said, no reason, and walked out. And obviously another warning bell went off. There was another day he came home from work in the middle of the day, which was weird. And he said something to me and I said something back. And he said, well, I know I'm not a good communicator. And a big warning bell went off. And I said, well, who told you that? And he said, oh, I don't remember, just somebody. And I said, well, who would have told you that? And he said, oh, I can't remember, maybe a supplier or somebody I do business with. Well, I know, and you know, no woman that's just some casual contact would say that to another man.
Right. There's intimacy in that statement.
And I knew only another woman who he was with would say that.
Mm-hmm. So you start suspecting this woman?
I don't at first, but he starts calling me her name all the time.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a big red flag.
And I wasn't too suspicious about that because he worked with her.
Okay.
And so if you work with somebody all the time.
Right, exactly. Or
okay.
sometimes your parent calls you the sibling's name, right?
Exactly. So yeah. I really wasn't even too worried about that. But what began to make me suspicious, he starting all these little fights with me, and he's not a fighter. And then when I would get really aggravated, he would call me her name. So then that seemed very weird, that was the time he would call me her name.
Okay. So these are the little signs or red flags that make the hair on the back of your neck stand up. But then something larger happens. You walk the Camino with your son, who becomes very ill. So for those who don't know what that is, the Camino, can you explain it and then tell us what happened to your son?
Sure. It's a 500-mile walk to just make it simple. It is a religious walk, although a lot of people on the walk do it for all kinds of other reasons and they're not religious. So I had already walked it once. I took my son and he got very, very, very sick. And I couldn't get a hold of my husband. And this was crazy because I can always get a hold of him, and he carries multiple phones and computers. And
just to say that this walk is in another country than the United States. So you're far away. Okay.
I'm very far away, and we're in very remote places. So it was a big deal. It's not like I was outside of some major city and I could take him into an emergency room. And so it really was a big deal. And I could not get a hold of him. And this was very, very odd.
Mm-hmm. What ends up happening? I mean, I know that your son is well, but how did you finally connect with your husband?
I never really connected with him. I finally got back to the U.S. and luckily I was able to get him some emergency treatment in the country, and I got back to the country. And then
what did you say to your husband? What's the first thing you said?
He just made up all kinds of work excuses and, oh my God. And I knew I had confidence in you. You would work it out. And so I wasn't too worried. And he said things like this. Mm-hmm.
Another incident that made you suspicious was that your husband starts doing yoga. He had never done that before. You find some hotel receipts of a trip that he had been on that you weren't aware of. But there's one monumental thing that your husband keeps from you, which is just incredibly unbelievable that he would keep this from you as his wife. What did he not tell you?
Well, my husband got cancer, and he didn't tell me he had cancer. And one night, it was very late at night, one of our children that lives in a different state. So I was in one state, my husband was in another state, and his child was in another state. And the child called to say, hey, Dad's assistant just called me and says, I need to help out more with his illness. And I said, what illness? And so I called my husband, and now it's like midnight. And I said, why is your assistant calling our child at almost midnight and saying you need help?
Also, let's qualify what you mean by child. How old is your son at this time?
He's 28 or 29.
Oh, okay, right. So it's an adult. Okay.
So he's an adult.
Yes.
All of the quote unquote children are adults at this point. But he's an adult. So now it's midnight, and I call my husband and I say, why are you going on and on to your assistant? And now you've got our child thinking that, you're dying and da-da-da. I said, you'd think you had cancer or something. And he says, I do. And I said, you do what? And he said, I do have cancer. And I said, what? You have cancer? Well, how do you know? I mean, who told you? Because remember, I don't know about him going to an appointment or a doctor or anything. I know nothing at this moment. And he says, yeah, I have cancer and I've already gone to a surgeon and I have to have surgery. And I said, oh my God, I'm taking a flight tomorrow. And I literally then just go into a fetal position for the next 12 hours. I am so upset.
How bad and advanced was the cancer at that stage? How long had he waited to tell you?
He had waited 3 months to tell me.
Oh, God.
He had stage 3B cancer, which is most people with the kind of cancer he had at 3B do not survive. It's a very low survival rate. I know a lot about cancer. It was just unbelievable to me that he would get this illness. And of all people, I would know how to get him to the best person in the world. And he didn't come to me. And instead went to his affair partner.
Probably not the time to interrogate him, but did you ask? Why didn't you tell me?
He said, yes, I did ask him. And he said, I knew you would be too hysterical and too upset. And I was trying to handle as much of it as I could on my own before I burdened you with the reality of what was happening.
Did you buy that argument?
A little, because
yeah.
We've been married for decades, and he does shield me from a lot of things and tries to work things out so that he's not dumping, huge problems on me that I can't fix. But in this case, he almost lost his life because he didn't come to me.
After many clues and a night at a hotel when he gets drunk, you find out about his affair. Who is the affair partner and how exactly did you find out?
His affair partner was his assistant.
Mm-hmm.
At the beginning, kept denying that it was any kind of a sexual affair, that he was just close to her and he was sorry he had gotten too close to her by talking to her all the time, and he would stop, being so close to her. And this went on for really a weekend of denials. And it was only after I was with one of my clients for the day that my client absolutely insisted that there was no way that he was carrying on this liaison with another woman without it being sexual. My client was a man, and he said, listen, there's no way, Vicky, that your husband is just having this intimate liaison for years and it not being sexual.
Had you believed truly in your heart of hearts that it wasn't sexual, or was there part of you that thought, just like your friend and client said, that's implausible?
It was so tough because I just didn't imagine my husband having an affair. I know a lot of women say this, and it sounds so ridiculous now. But I just didn't imagine him doing this.
What about him would make him incapable of doing this?
Well, first of all, he came to me as a very religious person, and I was, and so he made it seem at the beginning like he was much more religious than me, which is not true at all.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the way he presented himself. And I'd like to point out that he was married before me. And the woman had an affair right after they got married. And he said it just destroyed him. And so knowing that, why would you then have an affair? I don't know that this is a sexual affair. At this point, he's still demanding that he just got close to the woman and it's an emotional affair. And unfortunately, I had given him this term. I had said, well, is it just an emotional affair? So then he latched onto that and said, it's just an emotional affair, just an emotional affair.
In your state of mind at that time, when you still believed that it was only, quote, only an emotional affair, was that more or less hurtful to you to know there was no sexual?
It was less hurtful because I guess the way I could rationalize it, well, I was gone. She was his assistant. I know he's very needy. I could see how it could develop. And then at that moment, I'm kind of blaming myself. Like, okay, I am the one that should have been more attentive. And I caused this emotional affair. So that's what I'm thinking.
So he wants to make up with you after you find out and take you on a lavish shopping spree. Does he typically take you on shopping sprees or not so much? Okay.
No.
So why the shopping spree? What do you think that's about as opposed to taking you on a trip or?
Because he says, oh, we've made some money lately at the business and I'm sorry. I shouldn't have gotten so close to her and, let me just, let's go shopping. And he doesn't say it's going to be this big shopping spree. It just turns into that.
Are you surprised by the amount of money he's spending on this shopping spree?
Yes. And why? I keep saying, how can we afford this? I mean, how is this? I don't want to spend all this money. Like, you're making me really nervous. Like, how can we afford this? And he keeps saying, oh, no, it's okay. I want it to be a surprise for you. We made some money in the business lately and I was going to tell you and surprise you. But, now is as good a time as any to tell you and surprise you.
Are you believing that narrative at that time?
Yes, because I believe this man.
You trust him?
I believe him 100%.
Okay. How does your husband treat his affair partner / assistant, who is also a full-time school teacher? Is he lavishing her with things as well?
What I found out was he was fully supporting her. He was paying her mortgage, her car payments, her gas. She had a credit card to use. He paid for her groceries. There was nothing he didn't pay for that she needed. He paid for everything, including, getting a new car for her. Also, at the same time, I was driving a 10-year-old car.
How did you come to find out the extent to which he paid for her?
Only because I knew nothing at the beginning about computers or anything. And I taught myself. I spent every night learning online how to find out.
So you found out through emails and texts and digital communications?
Yes.
What did he do or say once you presented the information to him?
He would have a billion excuses. Oh, well, that was her pay. That was her pay. That's how I paid her.
So his claim was, she has a new car because instead of giving her a check, I got her a car. She has groceries and a mortgage and a new air conditioner because instead of writing her a check, I bought these things on her behalf.
Correct.
Did he say that with a serious face? Did he say that with a serious face?
He still says it with a serious face. On one of our anniversaries, he told me in a really angry way, I don't have time to make a dinner reservation. If you want to go out tonight, you make it. And I did. I later found out on that day, on that morning, the morning of our wedding anniversary, he had made hotel reservations for them to go away somewhere. And 2 hours before meeting me and our children for dinner, he went and bought her new appliances for her home.
Why do you think that he was so lavish with her and so miserly with you? The dichotomy between the two seems enormous. How do you explain that?
She presented herself as a very needy person who really needed him. This is what has been explained to me now by him and in therapy. And I don't present myself that way. I present myself as, okay, I'll handle it. I can do it. Don't worry about me. Da, 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 da. She presented herself in it completely, please help me. I can't do anything.
You call the affair partner. What was the affair partner like on the phone?
When I called her to have the conversation and I said, hi, this is Vicky, his wife, she, first of all, went crazy because he had showed her fake divorce papers after 2 years. So the first 2 years, she believed we were married. And then she kept bugging him to get a divorce. And so then he showed her fake divorce papers.
Fake divorce papers?
Yes, which I also found online, his fake divorce papers that he had printed out and showed her. Okay.
I've never heard of the fake divorce papers. So he gave her fake divorce papers. So she believes for part of the time they're together that he's divorced.
Last 2 years, correct, that they're now divorced. So when I called to say, oh, yeah, he's not divorced, for the first 10 minutes of the conversation, she argued with me that he was. And I just said, well, I think I would know if I were divorced. And you're welcome to call any of our children or any of our friends or anybody. We are not divorced. So once she finds out and she accepts that we are divorced, she just starts screaming and ranting and raving, and then launches right into asking me all about our financials.
And what did she want to know exactly?
She wanted to know what he owned, what properties he owned. It was a lot of that.
Why was she asking that?
Well, I guess you and I can come to the conclusion that part of the reason she was in it was for money.
Maybe, but there's also a world in which he was untruthful about what he owned, and she was wanting to verify that.
Well, right, but she was asking me about rental properties and how much we got a month for things and all of these kinds of things.
Were your answers consistent with what he told her?
No, nothing. Nothing he told her was true. Nothing.
Did you ask her about their sex life? Did you say, so was it really emotional and when did it turn physical?
Well, I kept asking her for the first 2 hours of the conversation, and she kept denying she had a sexual relationship and kept telling me to ask him. And I said, well, I'm asking you woman to woman. I mean, you have now been with my husband in whatever capacity it is that you two folks keep saying you've been together. So I'm asking you to just please be honest.
How does this conversation end between the two of you? Is there a part of you that are commiserating together saying, wait, he lied the same way to me? Is there a kinship developing there at all?
That would happen if she thought he was divorced from the day one, but she knew he was married from day one. And how do I know this? Because I have all their communications. So she knew he was married with children, grandchildren, and she was good with sleeping with my husband.
So how does the conversation end? It was a long conversation, I imagine.
A 4-hour conversation. She wanted to hang up all along. I kept apologizing to her because she kept screaming at me that my husband was no good and that he was a psychopath and a liar. And so she kept saying this to me. And when I when I first found out they had sex together, I started crying, and that's the time that I broke down and I said, so you had sex with him? And she said, yes, we did. And I said, did you have sex with him twice? And she said, we've had sex several times a day for 4 years.
I'm going to ask a very obvious question, but how did that make you feel?
Suicidal.
Suicidal.
Mm-hmm.
How did you come back from that?
Still trying to come back from it.
This is the first time in the conversation I see you getting very emotional on the verge of tears.
Yeah, he broke my heart. He broke my heart. Sorry.
No, please, of course. It's completely understandable. How does the conversation end?
She just hangs up finally. She just says I have to go, and she hangs up.
Mm-hmm. So you are suicidal after this conversation. Do you go to your husband and make him aware of just how devastated you are?
Yes.
And how does he respond to that?
He just says he's sorry, things got out of hand, and
do you think he was in love with her?
Yes, I think he was in love with her.
Is that what you think makes you so upset? The fact that he loved her?
Yes.
You are now restored with your husband and living together and working on your marriage. What do you feel was your role in the demise of your relationship?
A lot. I take a lot of responsibility for this. I shouldn't have been away from him that much. I should have paid more attention to him. I didn't. He needs a lot more support than I ever knew. That's difficult for me. I'm good at it with my kids and with my girlfriends. I'm not so good at it with him.
What kind of support? Emotional support about business?
He just needs a lot of emotional support. And it's difficult for me. He's very, very needy.
Mm-hmm. When we spoke earlier, you said that also you felt like you were picking on him or that you had spent too much time with girlfriends?
Yes, I did spend too much time with my girlfriends, but things he thinks are picking on him, to me, normal people would just brush off. So he's very, very, very sensitive to everything.
So we're going to wrap it up with this because you made an incredible discovery / connection about something that happened to him as a teenager.
Yes.
That affects him very much today. What happened to your husband as a teenager that relates to his affair and your marriage?
Just the real short version is he was in a horrible car accident that left him at home from the age of 11 on. He is a very big guy. He's a very tall guy. So by the time he was 14, he looked, like a big man, even though he was not. And he had a woman neighbor. And she was married. And she groomed him into this whole terrible affair situation for years. And she really taught him a world of cheating and lying and secrecy that made him know even how to do this, I think.
Groomed
him.
Groomed
him and think that it's okay.
So from the age of 14 till when was he having this emotional 18. And physical affair with the woman?
18.
For 4 years. Did his
Yeah.
parents know? Did a friend know?
No.
Did a teacher,
No.
a therapist? Nobody.
He told nobody. No one knew. I didn't even know about it for most of our relationship. He would hint at it, but I didn't even know about it for most of our relationship. And once this happened, I kept racking my brain trying to think, why would he think this is okay? This is so important. Why would you think this is okay?
Very astute of you. Very. Very good question to ask.
And it literally hit me like a lightning bolt one night while I was out doing a run. And it was 3 a.m. his time, because I was back, in
the other state. Yeah.
And I called him and I said, I understand why you did this. It makes all the sense. And I told him, and there was just dead silence on the other end. What I put together was this world of secrecy and cheating and lying. This wasn't a one-night stand. That I get. You're on a business trip,
Right,
you slept with somebody, you got drunk. Okay, I get it. This was not that. So who taught you this? Like, who taught you to be a CIA agent where you're leading this double life? Like, not your parents, not the family you came from. Who gave you the okay, the attaboy on this? And it hit me all of a sudden, oh my God, it was that woman. She taught him this. And when I called to tell him this, it was dead silence. And then he broke out crying. And he said, oh my God, this is the key that's unlocked the lock.
Wow. And from that day forward,
he understood what had been driving him for a long time. It's a longer, bigger story, but
yes, I understand. The crux of it is that this affair happened, and your incredible insight was it informed him how to do that in his adult life. And once he realized it and you realized it, became a pivotal moment in your relationship.
Yeah, it changed our whole relationship. It changed everything. And at that point, he became incredibly honest with me and started opening up about everything. And now we are happier than we've ever been together. I still am full of shrapnel, that's still there. I wish it hadn't have happened this way, that's for sure. But could we have changed our relationship to the amount that we did without it happening? Probably not.
Do you trust him now?
No. No, I'll never trust him again. I love him. I understand him. I do not trust him.
That's just an incredible story, with a very unexpected end.
It's a happy ending, and I just want to leave people, and the reason I wanted to come on your show, because I really don't want to share the story with everybody, but the reason I wanted to come on your show is I just want to give a little piece of my Vicky advice, which is advice you already know. But if I could tell anybody anything, I would say, once a couple weird things start to happen, I think you should write them down and keep the little notes of these weird things. Because had I done that, it would have all added up a lot quicker. And the last thing is that when I finally did find out, that final night when I knew 1,000% something was going on, it wasn't that there was a sign outside our room that said he's having an affair.
Right. Yeah.
It was that I knew with 1,000,000,000% certainty something was going on. And listen to your gut. So write down the signs so you don't forget them. So you can see
then you have to listen. Mm-hmm.
You have to listen to your gut.
Mm-hmm. That's a perfect way to end, because I say it all the time. Trust your intuition. And as much as I say it, I have to check my own self. It's hard because sometimes your conscious mind just doesn't want to believe.
Well, that's because you love somebody, and that's where you don't always act in your own best interest.
That's a very profound statement. You don't listen because you love somebody. Not because you're so naive and ignorant, but because your feelings for them override everything.
That's right. Because if anybody else, if a girlfriend gives you the same information, Jillian,
right,
you'll right away know the answer. But when it's you see, that takes over.
Yeah. So true. So true. It's a fascinating story. I love that you're, an avid listener of the show, and that listening made you want to come on. I hope that it's been helpful to you, and I hope and I know that your story is going to be helpful to very many other people. So thank you so much for coming on to Cheating When Love Lies.
Jillian, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to Cheating When Love Lies. Please continue to subscribe, rate, and share. And I always love to hear from you at jillianhamilton.online. Thanks so much for listening. See you next time.